Hello. How about an edit with me today? I have some portraits to edit from a recent shoot. It's 12:20 and this is going to be a relatively short and calm one because I have a thing at 1 o'clock. But I thought it'd be fun because I haven't done many portraits yet. My workflow involves Pass Gallery, which is my favorite. I've probably talked about it before, it's an online hosting platform for your photos and where clients can make selects and you can deliver them albums and they can order prints, very much like Pixie Set. But the reason I like Pass Gallery is because of its great workflow with Lightroom. It can connect right to Lightroom. So, sorry that's there. Okay, these are the photos that we're editing today. This was a portrait shoot that I planned with Jessie, and actually it was a gifted shoot for her. Her best friend surprised her. She wanted her to have some new, fresh professional portraits, and it was the sweetest thing ever. And her best friend Olivia was there helping throughout the shoot. You know, you gotta have a hype man, right? So the shoot went really well. The first thing I do is I upload all of the photos, back them up, and I culled them. So I went through and deleted any that were like blinking or, fuzzy or blurry or anything like that. And actually, just a full disclosure to talk about my process, I've kind of experimented with giving clients all the photos and some of the photos. And for this one, and the more I work, it depends on the kind of photo. But for this one, I went ahead and culled my favorites. It was like a very quick shoot. It was like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. It was one of the smaller packages. And, I way overshot. I always overshot, but I was just like, she's gonna have plenty to pick through. Why don't I just go ahead and cull it to really and truly what I think are the best ones, knowing what I can edit, and it worked amazing. She was already wanting to download the unedited, which makes my skin crawl, but that's a great sign, right? Okay, so she needed photos that felt like very much her. She sews, she quilts, she is a crafter, and she has a blog with all of that. So some of these photos were meant to go on that blog. We wanted things with personality, with movement, but also just some cute personal portraits. And then she works in academia, so she wanted a business headshot that she could use. And her best friend Olivia also suggested that we get some with a quilt behind her, because she made this quilt, and it was awesome because if you even moved it a little bit, like the background would change the colors and stuff because of how crazy the quilt was. So that gave us like a lot of fun things to work with. Okay. So this is the first one I edited. I threw on a preset that I got and tweaked from Mango Street. It's their video where they gave away a free preset, and I took it and I adjusted it to make it my own and fit kind of my style. But I actually they do something really cool with when you look at the original edit of this, they do something very interesting with the highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks for usually I'm accustomed to here, I'll show you on a different photo, to the this is my basic preset where you bring down the blacks, you bring up the whites, you bring up the shadows, you bring down the highlights. That's a very typical thing to start with, and you kind of adjust that. But theirs doesn't do that. It's really surprising. I'm going to reset this because I think I had already put an edit on it. This is theirs. They bring down the highlights, they bring up the shadows and up the blacks and down the whites. And what it really does is it starts to give you it gives you a moodier photo, I think, because of their tone curve. because they pair it with this kind of very almost dramatic tone curve. That it has a lot of points on it though, so it's very fine-tuned, and I could even fine-tune it more, but sometimes I get annoyed with the tone curve. And I like how this looks, so I'm just gonna leave it. So I edited the first one to try and figure out the style that I wanted to go with, and then I straightened it, and I put on the preset and adjusted that a little bit more, and then I took it into Photoshop and I cleaned it up a little bit, cleaned up a couple of the stray hairs and little like specks of dust on our shirt. And I still actually want to darken it a little bit and then maybe add another, and I know this is on top of a Photoshop edit and I probably shouldn't do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Yeah, that feels better. It was going a little bright, and I wanted it to be darker around the highlights where the trees were, so it kind of feels better already. And it's also looking just a little bit pink, so I'm gonna nudge it towards the greens a little more. All right, I feel good. Moving forward. So that's kind of like what I do is I try and work on one photo and I try and get my base edit for portraits. And especially if it's like in one zone, like all of these beautiful sweet potato colored kind of toned shots, I'll edit all similarly. I should really be drinking water, but instead I'm drinking coffee. All right, what else do we need to do to this one? This line feels a little off kilter, so I'm going to let's see what auto does. Yeah, that's not bad. And I'll just also point out what they do a little bit more in this preset, because I've paid very close attention to it and tweaked things a little bit. So they nudge up dehaze to make it a little bit crisper, I guess, sharper maybe, and then they nudge up the saturation but down the vibrance. And again, this is what the tone curve looks turned off, so really it's got a lot of dramatic contrast, and I think I like that for her. She's kind of like quirky and hip, and I, especially for these that aren't her business portrait photos, I like a little bit of it feels a little hip. It feels moody and trendy and cool. They also, the Mango Street preset puts grain on it, but I removed the grain because I want to be able to add that in or not. They bring the yellows a little more to the green side, and actually I want to tweak that just a little bit because I don't want those bright greens in this photo like this. I want it to be a little more chill and golden, so I'm gonna tweak that. They make this curve with saturation, so they're bringing down the saturation of the greens primarily, but it's a good practice to, when you're bringing one thing drastically down or changing one thing drastically in either your hue, your saturation, or your luminance, to kind of create a wave with it so that you don't get sharp differences in between the colors. So you kind of want to graduate those color changes. And they've done that. And I really don't like a whole lot of green in my photos, so I totally agree with what they did. That's one of the reasons I love using this preset. They also added just a little bit of split toning. Here's what it looks turned off. Here's what it looks like turned on. It's a little bit of the highlights brought into like the blue zone. It feels like, and that's something that actually I learned in color grading film a little bit, that, you know, the highlights brought towards the blues feels more like natural sunlight. And then they also brought the shadows towards the blues, which to me feels like, and it's on 8, so I'm going to see what this looks like off. see, and it just kind of, I think for me, it cools it down on the low side, and I like that. Let's bring that back to 8. Okay. And then this, I always do amount, radius, detail, sharpening, and mask it. And I think I learned this from Julia Trotti. I learned everything on YouTube, don't we all? If you hit Alt or Command while you're dragging this mask, you can very much see what is being affected by sharpening. And what you don't want is to sharpen everything like this. You don't want to sharpen all of those things. What you want are the defined lines and important aspects of the photo to be sharpened. So usually I leave it like in the 90s or 80s. This one actually could benefit from being right there at 70, 71. And it just brings up the detail only in those outlines and in those spaces. Check these because it's fixing my lens. I don't always, because sometimes I have a Tamron lens, 28 to 75 is what I shot this on at f2.8. I like to go wide open for portraits pretty often, but it has quite a vignette on it, so depending on the photo, I definitely want to check that enable profile corrections. And then they play with the calibration. If you've never played with calibration before, like, go watch a video on YouTube about it. It's a bit confusing. So I don't want to try and, I need to edit some more photos, so I don't want to try and explain it completely, but it's really cool. It's like HSL, but you're not changing one color at a time, because certain colors, like blue is in almost every color. There's just a little bit of blue in every color. There's just a little bit of green in every color. So calibration is kind of calibrating all of the colors, but combined with each other. So and now I'm explaining it, but if you bring the blues more towards this like cyan, you get this really, really vibrant look. So you can really play with like the creative look you want to go for with the calibration, and you can fix things if you were shooting at night and you have like tungsten-y lights. It's really great for fixing some wonky white balance issues. So yeah, so I like what they do though, and I'm just gonna leave it, because honestly calibration for me it's a minefield of just kind of playing and nudging and getting things where you like it, and I like it, so I'm gonna leave it. All right, so this one I've finished the Photoshop edit. Or no, I finished the Lightroom edit, and I'm going to hit Control E and take it into Photoshop. I'm a pretty detailed editor. I'd like to think. But also when you're doing a batch of portraits like this, you can't necessarily, spend three hours per photo. So I also want them to look consistent. So kind of figuring out what I'm doing for each one and then applying it to all of them as efficiently as possible is like a good move. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I'm going to exit out and not save. Okay. So if this was like an editorial photo, I would probably do some skin retouching. Or if this is just like a really important photo for my portfolio, I might consider doing some skin retouching. But a trick that I love to use, because it's quick, because it works, and because Lightroom was my first love, I learned how to do a lot of things in Lightroom rather than Photoshop, which I should have learned how to do things in Photoshop, because now it saves my life and saves me time. But I actually still do this, where I kind of highlight some of the places on the face that are like more textured skin zones. And for portraits, I tend to bring down the clarity and the texture just a little bit. I don't do this for all portraits, and there are so many portraits where I love to see the skin textures, but I actually have learned a lot over the years of what people want out of their portraits. And honestly, they don't want to look unnatural, but they want a little bit of skin softening. So this is a way to do it quickly, and I really don't go crazy on this at all. I just nudge it down like arrow key by arrow key until it feels good. And I will sometimes take an additional brush and brighten up under the eyes a little more so you can see where that brush is. And when I was editing on my laptop, as I was starting my business, I had one camera, one lens, and a MacBook is how I started. All of these brushes, like applying a lot of brushes would put a lot of hefty weight on my computer. So doing some of this stuff in Photoshop is actually, I would recommend it if you are trying to lighten the load on your Lightroom. Like say you don't have much RAM and your computer's huffing and puffing. I do find that taking things into Photoshop is a little bit, and just like spot fixing and stuff isn't too heavy, as heavy as using the brush tool constantly. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Let's turn off the brushes and turn back on. See, it's really subtle. I wouldn't do this in Lightroom if it made like a really huge difference. I would, if it made a huge difference, I would do some skin retouching. But considering where these photos are going, how they're going to be used, you know, most of the time web ready files are going to be used. The lower resolution ones are going to be used, I'm guessing, for her blog, for her social media. So it just doesn't make sense to spend all that time. And also, this was one of my smaller packages. Let's see. And I already have a bad habit of spending way too much time on client work. So sometimes I have to make those choices. When you're a freelancer, when you own your own business, time is money, and it's the hardest thing to say. It's so cringy to think about. But if you want to keep your business, running, it's not something you can avoid thinking about. Okay, so I don't ever want to take out any like beauty marks or moles or freckles. But if I see something that I feel like is a blemish, I don't mind removing it. I've probably said this before, and I will say it again, that I'm pretty picky about photoshopping and altering people's appearances. I don't do a whole lot of it, but what my priority is like, I want you to look like you would look on your best day. So if you had been drinking water all week and, you can't control that, maybe you've been wearing a mask all week because of the pandemic and you have a little bit of mask acne, so that kind of stuff happens. So I'm obviously going to take that out. If there's some like stray hairs that we weren't able to fix because the wind was blowing, or maybe if your cheeks are super red because it's hot outside and we're in Georgia or something like that, I'll just fix that a little bit because it's not necessarily your fault. And we could fix it in camera. We could like cover with makeup or go rest for an hour and your face is less red. But, that's a luxury. So I just fix it in post, and I don't mind doing that. It doesn't feel too unethical to do it like that. But I don't change, the shape of people's faces or make their waist thinner or remove anything crazy. and even when I've edited some boudoir photos before, I don't really like messing with cellulite, because I think it's beautiful, but I will also defer to whatever the subject, their preferences are. So if I'm photographing a woman who loves not wearing makeup and doesn't want me to do any touch-ups, absolutely. I'm never going to tell you to wear makeup for my portraits. I'm never going to, touch you up if I don't think you want to. But again, I do a lot of pre-planning in my portrait sessions, so I know what Jesse's preferences are. All right, so there you go. I'm just syncing these now. And then I'm kind of like looking at the things I'm syncing. So I did put a radial filter on here, and you got to be careful when you are syncing filters and things like that. Oh, look at her cute smile. Okay. And I know that I also have a graduated filter on here, and I wanted to make the corner of the first one with all the leaves in it, and it was like naturally the light was going darker in that direction, so I made this graduated filter that like brings down the shadows, brings down the exposure, and brings things a little more golden. So I'm actually going to switch corners because this house is so white, and I just kind of want to make this corner, feel a little more natural, a little less blue. It's so blue. Okay. I'm gonna bring actually the blues down in saturation because it's feeling a little much for me. Yeah, that looks good. Maybe her face is a little dark. I loved her from this angle, but the sun was obviously to her left. So I asked her to try and find her light, but her hair looks so cute on this cheek. So this was definitely going to be a pick. And I figured I'd just kind of lighten things up now in post. I'm just doing some of the brushing and clarity. Her tattoos are so cool. Yeah, okay, that looks good. Now let's bring it down. It takes me a long time to edit a few photos, especially when I'm doing something like this where and this is my choice, but I'm yakking, talking, through it. But even still, I'm a really detailed editor, and I like having time to put into photos. It's one of the reasons I do business photography, because I want people who care about the details, because they're going to be using these photos to make them money, hopefully. Headshots or photos that you use on your website or your about page need to look professional. And I have a lot of respect for family and portrait photographers and graduation portrait photographers, because first of all, communicating with clients and communicating value with clients and figuring out what style people want it's a whole nother ballgame. With business, at least you can require a whole lot of information gathering, and you can always say like, I need to know, because if I don't know, then we can't make sure we're taking photos that are going to fit your audience, that are going to fit where they're going, aspect ratio, blog, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, and I feel like taking photos for businesses, there's a higher level of, I guess, like risk, because they're spending money on their business and you kind of have to deliver. You have to deliver. And I'm not saying you don't have to deliver with family portraits, but with family portraits, if you get the right shot of the kid doing something cute, there are so many things that don't matter. The only thing that matters is how cute that kid looks, and, you know, that you got that photo, that money shot. I don't know. And it's also it's frustrating and complicated because there's so many different kinds of photography and so many different kinds of photographers. There are some people doing it as a side hustle, as, you know, for fun, as a hobby. And then there are people who do it full time. And the pricing is obviously different. Even if there's you've got a hobby photographer or a professional career photographer doing the same types of photos, the pricing is different. The processes are going to be completely different. You may or may not have contracts. You may or may not have planning sessions, or it might just be kind of like off the cuff. It totally depends, and I think that's honestly frustrating for photographers and clients, because how do you know? There is no solid price point. There is no expected clear cut, this is the industry rate for X photos. It puts a lot of pressure on the clients to figure out what they want out of a photo and do their own like homework on figuring out the best person to hire. I wish it was easier. I'd like to help make it easier. That's why I always say, like, if you're looking for a photographer, I'm happy to help educate and find the best fit, even if I'm not the best fit, especially if I'm not the best fit. If someone comes to me looking for family portraits, I can tell you a great family portrait photographer, but it's not me. Okay. I don't know why I just checked those boxes, but I wanted to fix straighten this one. Yeah, that looks better. I like it. Okay, I love this. I love this straight on photo. I wish that beam wasn't there, but it is what it is. And if it was if it wasn't kind of like quick headshots, I might consider photoshopping that out, but that would take me 2 hours. So we're not going to do that. All right, let's sync this one, and let's go ahead and sync this one with those presets. And let's bring this up. Okay, we're getting moody here. I like that, how that looks, where it is. It feels good. I like the contrast between the left and right sides, especially since like the light is hitting her face, but I want to bring up the shadows on the side just a little bit, and maybe bring the shadows up a little bit more, the blacks up a little bit more. This would be a cool black and white photo. Okay. I'm gonna finish this one and then I'm probably going to hop off. But it's been a very calming, cool editing session. I got inspired to film like just chill, calm videos editing by Teha Types when I was watching his live streams on keyboards. If you've ever wanted to watch something meditative, his live streams are pretty chill and just satisfying, because watching him slowly and surely build this beautiful keyboard is so cool. Okay, let's brush under the eyes and let's be precise about it. I think it's all too easy to get a little bit sloppy with the brush tool in Lightroom. I think I went a little severe on that one. Yeah. Taking her into Photoshop. It is like, it's late November or mid-November and it is finally cold in Georgia. It's like 40 something degrees outside. I've been waiting to wear a sweater for a hot minute. But I'm gonna be moving to Boston in January. Sign up for Mushaboom Studios newsletter if you want to get the scoop and lots of fun resources. Because we announced basically that I will be moving to Boston this week in our newsletter, and Katie Lynn's going to stay here in Atlanta. I'm moving with my boyfriend who got a dream job. He got a postdoc, so it'll be for 2 years at least, maybe. We'll see. But I'm excited to, try and find a new photography community. And I'll be coming back to Atlanta because I still have clients here. I'll be making trips back, not just for clients, but also because I can't go too long without seeing my best friend and twin sister. So I'm already planning to come back. But the move is going to be fun. In the middle of a pandemic and in the middle of January, freezing cold, moving to Boston. It's going to be like dark so early. Really smart move, right? But I'm excited. I hear awesome things about Boston. But yeah, go sign up for our newsletter because we got some new other cool things coming out very soon. If you like this kind of stuff, like these lives, or not lives, these like edit with me's, or if you like creative resources, check us out at mushaboom.studio, www.mushaboom.studio. And I think I'm almost finished with this shot. And I'm really happy with this one. Cool. I've just got to chuck through the rest of these today, and I'm loving how they're turning out. So you'll probably see them on our Instagram, on our portfolio very soon. Thank you for hanging out with me if you made it through this whole video. Comment questions or anything you want to know about my process, and maybe I will bring it up in the next edit with me. All right, cheerio.